I'm gonna probably sound like a nerd in this episode, so just giving you a warning. And
Nerd.
I know, right? But I'm no expert programmer, but the way he explained it pretty well in detail. The lead technical director on there, or the lead technical director. You know what I'm trying to say.
Bar City, the place to be. Life's a madness, wild and free. Tune in now, let the good vibes flow. Bar City, your favorite show. Welcome back to Bar City, episode 81. I'm Eric.
Kevin.
How was your weekday weekend?
It's pretty good. Actually, some got some cool new information. Uh, while I was on the weekend. But before we get into that, I'll let you tell me about your weekend.
My weekend's been pretty good. Just enjoying the last few things that I won't be able to eat for a while since I'm going on my diet. Basically.
Mm.
Yesterday the wife was having a sinus infection, so she didn't go to work. So we just cuddled up on the couch and watched YouTube videos and random stuff together. Just kind of made a whole day out of it.
Yeah,
And the day I've been pretty much doing the same. Been a boring. It's been a chill weekend for me. Kind of a refresh my brain.
yeah. It should be every weekend.
Yeah, some weekends I'm actually doing stuff. It just depends on what I got going on. If I need to do something that weekend or what, or as long as shit ain't going horribly wrong at the guard shack.
Honestly, years ago when my kids were a lot younger and they were still in that, like, have to run around and chase them kind of stage. And
Hmm.
anytime they'd come over to visit me on my days off of work, I felt like I was working harder on my days off than I was at work. I was like, man, I need to go back to work so I could take a break.
Yeah, that's the thing about especially our job is it's
Yeah,
honestly, yeah, it can get busy and get difficult, but on average, it's a pretty chill job comparatively to most. So when you come home and things are chaotic, you're like, I just want to go back to work. It was peaceful.
yeah. Well, once your kids, I guess you got to appreciate where you got it though, because once your kids get older, they just kind of turn into lumps when they sit, like they just
Right.
sit around all the time now. So like now it's getting them to do something is the tricky part.
Yeah, they'll
Oh,
come back around the other side eventually.
oh yeah, go through stages as they get older.
Hmm.
But anywho, yeah, I had originally I had different plans for this podcast. I was going to talk about like something kind of funny, you know, and I had it. I didn't know how long it would. I didn't know if it'd fill up the entire podcast, but I was just something funny, some funny stuff I was going to talk about. But screw all that crap. I want to talk about because something happened over my days off that a new devlog for the Wayward Realms dropped, and I want to talk about the Wayward Realms.
Hey, hit me with it. You've seen me go crazy. Hell, the last episode was me going on a nostalgia trip. So,
Yeah. So, warning to everyone, this they talked about a lot of technical things in the devlog. It wasn't so focused on like graphics and story or lore or anything like that. It was focused more on like game engine and how the game's going to function, all that stuff. So, I'm going to probably sound like a nerd in this episode, so just giving you a warning. And
nerd.
I know, right? Well, I'm no expert programmer, but the way he explained it pretty well in detail. The lead technical director on there, or the lead technical director. You know what I'm trying to say.
Oh, before you get into this fully, me and my partner from our LLC.
I've come to
LOC.
the LLC I'm building with the tabletops.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've decided that we are officially agreed to any side projects to all be connected and funneled back, even if it's to help with friends project. So say my LLC kicks off and you need any help developing your game stuff, you can come to me and I will actually help fund you through the podcast into your projects.
Oh, I got you. I got you. I was confused for a second. I was like,
As a
wait, what?
backroom,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
figured I since we've talked about our future plans on this podcast, I figured I'd go ahead and drop that in there.
Yeah. Another side, I'll go into more detail when I start talking about it, but him showing off one of the tools that he created has definitely opened up a world of ideas for future games for myself too. Because I on it like him, I'll just talk more about it when I get to it. But yeah, it's definitely I'm like my jaw like almost hit the floor when he was showing it. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. And anyway, so the devlog drop for people who don't know what the Wayward Realms is. It's basically like you obviously know what Elder Scrolls is. Most everybody knows that.
Hmm.
Daggerfall is the second Elder Scrolls game. It came out in 1996, if I have the year right. And but that, Bethesda at the time had a completely different group of people working on, there. They all left and stuff like that over the years by the time they got up to like late development in Morrowind. And of course, before they even started Oblivion, most of them were all gone by that point, the original group. And so most of the original group has come back together about 4 or 5 years ago and decided that they wanted to make a spiritual successor to Daggerfall because they felt like the later games didn't quite achieve that. And that's what the Wayward Realms is. It's essentially like taking Daggerfall but bringing it into modern day times with modern day graphics and everything.
Okay.
And so they dropped the new devlog, and they were originally going to use Unreal Engine 5 to make the game, but they mentioned in their last devlog, but they will no longer be using that engine, and they're going to be making their own engine. And that was one of the reasons why there was a delay, because early access of the game was supposed to come out at the end of last year,
Hmm.
and that didn't happen. Now, it's not like they're starting from the ground up or anything when they start the new engine. All they had to really do was just build the engine. All the stuff they've created, all the artwork and all that stuff, all that's going to get carried over.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're starting from scratch or something. And they're just you had to start a new engine. So and after I was kind of like, they kept mentioning that they were kind of fighting with the engine of Unreal based with some of the ideas they wanted to do to make their game do what it does. And I was like, kind of like, I wonder what exactly are they fighting with the engine on because they didn't really go into details. But after seeing this devlog, I think that was a great idea that they made their own engine because the technical director, Kai is his name, he was able to make some new tools himself that is going to make this, because the map in this game is going to be absolutely ginormous. Like it's bigger than Daggerfall, and it's all like this. Keep in mind, this isn't Minecraft where every time you load in the game, it's like procedurally generates a new world when you start a new game. That's not what these games do. These are static games that they're making at the beginning. So there is procedural generation involved, but it doesn't happen like when you load in a new game. Like everyone's gonna have the same world that they start in. It's just the things that change after that based on decisions you make will be where the changes come in. And but so the map is huge. So they've had he naturally everyone thought that they were just going to make the game the same way that they did Daggerfall. With Daggerfall, they had a huge map, and then all the towns, villages, and cities were sort of procedurally generated at the time that they made the game. They just rotated the houses and the buildings around and stuff like that, and then planted them in all the spots that they were supposed to be on the map. And but apparently that's not based on this new tool that he has made. that is not exactly going to be the way that they do this with the Wayward Realms. He has made, I don't even know how else to explain it, but it's like a mini map tool, where it's sort of like each tiny little block, and I'll leave a link in the show notes or the description, and you can watch the dev. Anybody can watch the devlog for themselves because it's kind of sometimes it's hard to understand it unless you see a visual, and but he has made every single block on the mini map. It represents a certain huge chunk of land in the game.
Hmm.
It is like the program, like there's a unique uh key,
Mm-hmm.
variable, I guess you could say, attached to each part little block in the game. And so when you make a change to something on the mini map and then you initialize it in the engine on the tool there, it automatically places it into the world in the game because those two are connected to each other. And he showed an example of that. He created an entire forest in like 2 seconds and initialized it, and then there, boop, loaded in the game, and then there it was. And then he put some little houses and stuff around, and then again did the same thing, and then you loaded in the game, and then all the houses you could see them all as you turned around. And
Hmm.
they didn't go into details on how far they're going to be using this tool. I that He seemed to insinuate that they were going to be using this to place the houses and stuff like that
Yeah.
into, like, to make the villages, the towns, and the cities and everything. So it's going to be lean a little bit more into that handcrafted kind of experience, but just done in a different way. This will
Okay. So,
also, oh, sorry, what?
so they're basically making entire villages and cities a little bit easier on themselves and more efficient.
Right. Instead of using procedural, because normally, like, yeah, like the way they did it in Daggerfall, and pretty much all developers, when they make huge maps like this, the way they do it is they just kind of, they use procedural generation. They let the program just kind of make it for them based on the information that they gave them.
Yeah.
But that's with here, they made a tool where they can like manually just place the stuff in, and without having to, like, be in little sections of the map all over the place. They can just zoom out, they see the entire map. And this will also make a huge change because one of the biggest complaints that everyone has with Daggerfall is the fact that the wilderness feels, a little empty. It doesn't bother me because that's just not the type of game it is. That's not really what it's going for. But admittedly, I wouldn't complain if there was more stuff to do out in the wilderness. But with this kind of tool, I don't know if this is going to be planned for early access or not. I guess only time will tell.
Mm-hmm.
You could create a lot easier, a lot more stuff to do in the wilderness. And he even showed an example of that with one of the quest examples he in this devlog as well. But I'll get to that here in a little while. So yeah, you could like create theoretically like certain structures like mountains and rivers and whatever you wanted, like all just using this tool. And then, like I said, he dragged and dropped a forest by just like a huge section of a forest, and you could even use like a randomizer to what type of forest you wanted. He was like, did you want it to be like more cluttered amount of trees, or did you want the trees to be a bit more separated,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. And he just ran it through this tool that did all that, and again initialized it, and then there it was right there in the world. It loaded in like 2 seconds. And
Oh, damn.
yeah, and because that was one of the things he was like, I'm sure people are probably wondering how long will it take to load a huge world like this. And then he loaded in. He was like, but as you can see, it actually loads very quickly. And I'm going to get to that on how they were able to pull that off too. And because everything in the game is all going to be running in the background, like at all times. Like it's not
Hmm.
going to work like most games where, like, usually they're only, especially games with huge maps, where usually it's only like rendering like things that you're in the area, kind of like in Skyrim when you walk into a city and you have to load in the city when you walk through the doors and stuff like that. All that, none of that's being rendered when you're outside the city. It doesn't until you get in there, because otherwise it would slow the game down too much. And but with this, everything, all cities, all NPCs, everything is all rendering in the background in this huge map. and they were able. The reason why they could do that, yeah, again, I'll get to that in a little bit. But this this mini map tool is probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my entire life because I guess and I was like, he mentioned that the all the code that they're making, since they're making their own engine, they can do this now. None of it will be hard coded or locked out or anything. If you own the game, you have access to the source code, he said, and he even showed it in all the folders and everything. He's like, you can jump in here. This will also be great for modding, of course. I can't,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'm sure people will get really crazy with the mods in this game. Yeah. But and so that's mostly what he was intending when he was talking about the not locking out the code or anything. But another thing I could do, and I will be doing after I play the game for a few days when it first released, one of the first things I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be jumping into the code because I want to see exactly what he used to make this little tool here. And I may potentially be able to make my own version of this in the future, that is. Not right away, but in the future for one of my projects as well, because man, oh man, would that be handy for some of the ambitious project that I have planned for the future as well. If I could have a tool like this, that would make a world of difference. So, and but anyway, so that's the little mini map tool. He zoomed out. He showed you that the game early access will only be on this one island of Ijar because obviously they're gonna release the game, test it out, and let the audience see. They basically have admitted that they've kind of ran out of money with the money that they've gotten so far, and so they're gonna do this one island, get it all fleshed out once they get everything finished, everything. And the game is supposed to be released sometime the mid this year, so we'll see if it gets pushed back again or not, or early access anyway. And so they're going to have enough to be able to finish this one little island here. But well, I'll say one little island, but the island is huge. It's like I don't know how much bigger than Skyrim, but way bigger than Skyrim. And this is just one island. He zoomed all the way out on the map tool and showed the rest of the world that will eventually exist once full release comes out. And you couldn't hardly even see the island anymore once he zoomed all the way out. It was so tiny on the mini map that I had to squint to see it because that's and on my computer too because that's how small that thing was after he zoomed all the way out. I was like, oh my god. I was like, so the game is absolutely huge, or it will be when it's finally finished. And so that was anyway, that was a little mini map tool, and I thought that was yeah amazing. So
That actually is kind of cool.
yeah, again, I'll try my best to remember anyway to put a link to the devlog directly so everyone can get on there and kind of see the visual of what I'm talking about. I had to watch the video probably like three times to catch all the little details because you know how that is, especially if you're not don't know much about programming. I know some, but not enough to follow all the details of all this stuff. And so, and they're talking like really fast. And so I'm sitting there like trying to catch everything. I had to rewatch it like several times to fully grasp everything that he was talking about. The game they go a little bit into the graphics, but not too much. They admitted that the graphics that they showed, weren't going to be the finalized graphics, that they're still, working on them. But I thought the graphics looked fine to me, but I'm also not a big graphics guy, so it doesn't matter to me as long as they're not straight up ugly. I don't really care that much. And but they did mention, so for anyone, if you look at the game and see that, you're like, and you kind of think, it's like just know that that's not going to be the final version of the graphics. That's just those are fill-in graphics until they get all the stuff set up that they want. But they did show some of the graphics for like the weapons and the armor and stuff, and in my opinion that stuff looked really good. They showed a lot of the different types of helmets you'll be able to wear in the game and the clothes you can wear with your armor, just like you do in Daggerfall. You can swap out all your clothes, mix match things, because of course everyone wants their character to look cool, so that's part of the aesthetic of some of these games. And so, and showing off some of that armor, I was like, now that looks really cool. So, and so I thought the graphics on that end looked really, really good. So it's just mostly when I say like graphics, maybe not AAA graphics. Mostly when they were showing some of the grass and trees and stuff, I think they were planning on they're probably going to flesh that out a little bit more before
Yeah.
early access. And so, because admittedly, when I saw that, I was kind of like, oh yeah, but it looked fine to me. Like I would be, but like I said, they're going to flesh that out some more. But so that was the art style and the little mini map tool. So he showed off the tool that he used. Now, with this one, he admitted that he did outsource um, some elements from another engine called Vulcran, I think it called it. I looked it up, and basically, what that engine is it has the ability to generate, like you could put it into the code. This engine, not their engine, not the Wayward engine, I think is what he was calling it, but the Vulcran engine. This engine has the ability to take pixels, like you create a bunch of pixels on a graph and then cause it to where the pixels connect together in points and create 2D shapes. And
Hmm.
then it goes in an order of operation, and then the 2D shapes connect together to generate 3D shapes, and so
Okay.
on and so forth. And this can all run just within the program on how accordance to how you set it up, even change colors of stuff and everything. It was pretty cool. Now I want to clarify that I don't want anyone to think that they're going to just be generating all the graphics in the game. Like I said, the graphics they have, they made themselves, and they're going to be putting them into the game like that. Like none of this is like going to be just like they're not going to be put it into the program and like people are just going to suddenly appear that they didn't even create. Like all the NPCs and everything they created themselves and all the artwork and everything. But this is just a tool you can. I wanted to use an example of what that engine can do. That's something that this engine can do. But yeah. What he's using this for, some of the code for, or some of the tools for anyway, from this engine is on how the game is sort of going to be rendering everything in the background without slowing, too putting too much pressure on your GPU or in your computer and stuff. He basically he showed a graph, like a X and Y axis, and there were so many pixels on this graph, little, that it looked like TV static. And they were all different. There were like various different colors. Every single pixel on this graph had a unique number assigned to it, and it all had information assigned to it. And even the colors of the pixels all had different types of information assigned to it. And like I said, it literally, there were so many pixels it looked like TV static. So, because that's how many there were. He said every single pixel on this graph is an NPC in the game. And all of these information is going to be carrying on this graph while you're while the game is running. So this graph is going to be sort of running in the background. And each NPC in the game will things can change about their lives, because all NPCs will have a schedule and everything. They'll all go places and do things. And but it won't be like, because and some people are like, well, what's so impressive about that? They did that, with Oblivion, and that was years ago. Well, like I said, it's not going to be like Oblivion. The NPCs will have all their own schedules and stuff, but based on decisions that can happen in the world. And they didn't specify how far it'll go into it. They didn't say anything of like, will an NPC just one day like leave their job and go move to a town? I don't know if it's going to go quite that far, but they did mention that a lot of things in an NPC's life can change based on things that change around them in the town or in the world around them,
Hmm.
and based on decisions that you as the player make can also change things about individual NPCs lives too, and towns in general. And
That's
all
actually
this
gonna be
is
dope.
being Yeah, all these things will be running, and that's why all this needs to be ran in the background and not all the players. Because normally, like with even with NPCs with schedules, they can just kind of be on standby mode
Yeah.
until you load in that area, and then they'll just be in their spot that they're supposed to be during that time of day. But you can't do that with this type of concept because you don't know where this NPC may they may have made decisions long before you even got to that town because maybe you just didn't know that town existed yet, you as the
Hmm.
player. And so by the time you finally got to that town, this NPC has maybe made multiple different decisions and you didn't get to see any of that stuff. You are now stepping into a different part of their life based on all the stuff that could have changed. This graph with all the pixels on it, he said, only takes up about, because of the fact that they're all pixels, only takes up about as much information on the RAM or on the GPU as much as like one little graphic would take in the game, like a rock or something sitting on the ground. He said that's how much information it takes up because of the way it works. And so he said it won't be slowing down your GPU. It won't be running, your computer's not going to be like running hot or anything like that. And he said what it does is the game knows exactly where you are based on each block in the game. So as soon as you enter an area, it swaps out those pixels, and based on this, he used some of these tools from the Volcron engine and it swaps them out for the 3D art that will then generate into the game. And they'll all be still doing the exact same thing. It's just they'll look different than what they looked before. They won't be the pixels anymore. And so that's how that's all going to work. And the same thing as you walk in and out of other areas, NPCs. So even if an NPC walks out in the wilderness, when you walk to where they are, they're going to be over there because it'll load them right in. It'll swap out that pixel for the 3D art. And so it's only going to be putting the stress on the 3D art that where you're at. The rest of the game's all the rest of the NPCs are all pixelated. So that's how it's able to pull this off. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this guy's like a programming genius, man. Mm.
Hmm.
And so, yeah. So that's some of the basics. I'll go into some more detail. So
Hmm.
anyway, those are the main tools that I was pretty excited about. The mini map is probably the part that blew my mind the most, but I will admit that rendering that stuff in the background was really cool too, because I know they kept mentioning over and over again during development that NPCs in their lives and how they live their lives and all the dialogue and everything was going to be a main focus of theirs because they knew the importance of that. And I was just like, oh, okay. But they didn't really go into details like on how they were going to do that or what exactly they meant by all that. But now we're starting to see all this really come into, laying out. And I was like, which is really cool to see. So, but one of the other things is environment, things that decisions you can make, and theoretically, even things that happen in the world can also affect the environment. Again, I don't know how far they're going to go into this. I don't know if it's going to like anyway. He showed an example of like, let's say you're a mage or something, right? And you cast a fireball on a small handful of trees
Yeah.
nearby. It's not just going to burn those trees down that unless they're the only trees nearby or something. If you were in a forest, especially a cluttered one,
Oh
a lot
God.
of things will come into effect here. If you burn those trees down, and let's say like how how big the fire catches will come into play, weather will come into play. If the wind's moving a certain way, it may blow the fire just like in real life. It may blow the fire on the other trees too, and before you know it, you have burned an entire forest down, and that affects the world in some way. Now again, they didn't go into details of how far you can go with this. I don't know if you could blow up an entire city or something. I don't know if it's going to go that far. Although that would be pretty cool. I don't know if you'll be able to go that far with it, but they definitely
Uh,
some major environment, effects will be able to take place here. So that's more of a simpler example of decisions you make can affect the world, and that may potentially affect a future quest or something like that too, and making decisions like that as well. Um, so that's some of the environmental stuff. Now, they mentioned throughout development that they wanted to definitely flesh out the side quests and stuff like that, elements and stuff like that. By the way, this game will not have a main quest, so there's no main quest in this game. It's just a world you live in and quest in. And but in Daggerfall, the side quests are really good and really fun, but admittedly, even as much as I love this game, I have to admit this, um, they can get maybe a little bit repetitive after a while because basically the way they set it up in Daggerfall, that it's a much more simplistic way of setting this up. Um, where you have a base type of quest and the generating that takes place within the quest on, the quest giver may, like, let's say the quest is um go to a dungeon and kill a certain amount of enemies inside that dungeon, and so now you got to go to that dungeon and look for all those enemies and kill whatever the amount he told you. Well, the part that gets generated is the type of enemy you're going to kill,
Mm-hmm.
and where the dungeon, what the dungeon is, where you're going to go, and how many of that enemy you're going to kill. And of course, various decisions you make on the quest too can change things as well. And that's a cool concept for Daggerfall, and it works really well. But admittedly, after you do that, like, if you've already done that type of quest, that's not the only type of quest. That's just one of them. I was giving an example,
Yeah.
but admittedly, once you've done that type of quest, like let's say 5 times already playing the game, it kind of does start to feel like the same quest after a while, depending on what takes place during the quest. But the Wayward Realms, they want to take that concept and push it much, much further. So, and a lot more details.
Hmm.
So, what's going to happen? He gave an example of a quest, and this is a simple quest too. Obviously, there'll be more complex quests, way more than this one, but the simple quest that he gave as an example is he said, let's say you run into a merchant out in the wilderness, and he has asked you to he lost let he got let's say he got chased away by some wolves, a pack of wolves out in the wilderness, and he left behind his wagon that had some rum sitting in it, and he's asking if you can go get that rum and bring it to him, and he'll give you a reward if you do. And up surface, it's like, okay, well, this will be easy. I'll just go scope it out and look for it, and bring it back to him, right? Well, that's probably more the Daggerfall approach. But this game, there's a number of things that could also be generated on top of that that may change it. He said, once you get to the wagon, he said, let's say the engine, the random generator, I think they call it the VGM, I think is what he's calling it, um, decides to bring in a couple of bears while you were over there talking to the merchant, and the bears kill all the wolves. So now the game's not going to just generate in a pack of wolves; it's going to generate in dead wolves instead, and there's going to be bears nearby. So when you get there, you may have to fight bears instead of wolves, which
Hmm.
may, depending on how powerful they make the bears, that may make things a little bit more challenging. Also, maybe while you were scoping out the wagon, you found some gold or some kind of priceless object in there. And so now, of course, depending on what this is where role playing, of course, comes into play, and people's imagination will take into play as well. Depending on what type of character you play, you may make some different decisions that could affect this quest. Hint, hint, wink, wink. If do you want to steal the skull or do you want to be an honest person, kind of thing. Or he said, let's say the VGM decides to generate not only the dead wolves, or maybe the wolves are still alive, depending on what it generates. Um, you may bump into some thieves nearby, and the thieves may have their own objective about this particular situation that's take place too. They may be like, hey, go bring this to us instead, and we'll basically they'll be the interceptors, right? Which this isn't a new concept. This is stuff you see in later Elder Scrolls games as well, and also in Daggerfall. But all that is usually pre-planned out. This is something that may or may not happen depending on what the VGM decides. um And so there could be a change there that could also affect various things with this merchant and stuff like that. Or this is the really cool part.
Hmm.
What if the VGM, because keep in mind, all the NPCs in this game have their own lives, right? There are other adventures. You're just one person in this world. You're not the chosen one. Um, Other NPCs are adventurers too, some of them. What if he there's nothing, obviously a merchant has nothing to gain from only offering this quest to you. What if he offered it to other people too, other NPCs in the game? And some NPC maybe beat you to the job. That may affect some play too if you want to go chase down that NPC. Again, this all leans into what type of character you're playing. If you want to go chase down that NPC, or if you just want to give up on the quest and leave and say, fuck it, get out of there. And so technically you failed the quest. But although you probably wouldn't use the word failed, you would just use it as the word like alternative pathway for your character, right? And because failed makes it sound like you did something wrong. I'm like, that's just what happened in this situation. And or maybe you met up while you were after you got there. Maybe you got there first, but then other NPCs showed up, depending on what these types of NPCs are and what their personality is like, because all that comes into play too. They may fight you for it, or some other events may unfold and other things. Now, of course, this can get a little tricky with programming. They have to be very careful here because this may, or depending on how they set all this up, this may or may not cause problems. So they have to be careful here, but they've reassured that there won't be, they've tested this out and there's no problems with it, but I guess time will only tell. So that's an example of a simple quest of all the different things that may happen on this quest. So I can't even imagine what it would be like when you get to like a maybe a quest that has a lot more story element in there. And in Daggerfall, the way the random generation works, because of the fact that out in the wilderness, from my understanding in Daggerfall, out in the wilderness, like a huge block is the game just kind of knows if you're in the wilderness or in a town, because it knows, like, I guess based on like some invisible map markers of some kind that you just can't see. So once you walk into a town or something like that, obviously all that's set in the way it's supposed to look based on the way they made it look in there during development. But out in the wilderness, from my understanding, it just kind of procedurally renders in like various trees and rocks and bushes and whatnot as you're walking through the wilderness, and it knows based on how far you've walked if you've reached the next, town or not. But and because of the way that works, they couldn't really generate a quest that just takes place somewhere out in the wilderness. And that's one of the things that come into play on why people say the wilderness feels so empty and kind of boring in Daggerfall. So in Daggerfall, the procedural generation always is attached to a dungeon, or it's attached to a town, usually a building or a house of some kind in the town. Like someone may give you a quest where you have to find the object or the person located inside of a residence somewhere in such town once you get there. And that's the way it randomly generates it in. It attaches it to that house directly or to the dungeon directly. But because of the way the Wayward Realms is set up, each block having its own unique ID, now you can generate side quest or quest anywhere in the game, whether it's in the dungeon, in the wilderness, in a city, wherever it is. And this is an example of that, where this is all taking place just out in the wilderness. You just happen to bump into this merchant, and all of this just was generated in this little section here in this huge game, and something that they never could do in Daggerfall, but because of the way they set it up. And so this will, again, is another example of how it will really lean into a lot more variety and quests and stuff like that. Simply having it take place in different places, I think, adds a lot more variety. Now, from my understanding, the dungeons themselves are still randomly generated at development time, not every time you walk into the dungeon. Like again, this isn't Minecraft. Um, so, but the reason why they can do that with the dungeons and it not, be like a problem is because the way dungeons usually are in a game, they're usually blocks of information. But in an earlier devlog, they did say that the dungeon generation will be a lot more detailed than the way it was in Daggerfall. In Daggerfall, they made preset blocks, like maybe it was an area that had like two rooms and a hallway connected all together. And then the generator just generated all these blocks together and connected it in a way together that just made sense, connected the hallways together, etc.
Okay.
Well, the problem with that, I mean, it works fine, but the problem with that, again, as you're walking around in the dungeon, eventually you'll start, even if it's a completely different dungeon that you've never been into before, eventually you'll start to recognize little areas from previous dungeons because there's only so many blocks that they use that can come into play here. So you'll be walking around and and you'll be like, hey, this this looks kind of like that other dungeon, this little block area in that other dungeon, and that's because of the random generator and how it works. But in the Wayward Realms, Ted Peterson, he's the lead director of the game, he explained it to where it's no longer going to be blocks of information, it's going to be pieces of information. the Each individual section will be generated together to create a block, and then it connects the blocks together. So you shouldn't, I mean, obviously you're going to find some similar things, just like if you lived in a real fantasy world, like, and you were exploring dungeons and caves all the time, you're going to find like natural, you know world things that are going to look sort of similar to other natural world things. And so you'll see some similarities, but you're not going to see the exact same like room or anything like that like you do in Daggerfall. Like it's all going to be different because of the more detailed generation. And again, they didn't go into details on how they're going to, because of this new map tool, they could theoretically, I guess, though, with the amount of towns, villages, and cities, though, it probably would still be pretty time consuming to hand place all of them in. But even with that tool, so I don't know. They may still be using some random generation for that. I don't know. But again, they didn't disclose that. But because of this tool, you could, handcraft all the cities if you wanted to, but it would still take some time to do all that, even with this tool. But Daggerfall, all the cities were, other than the main ones, I think the city of Daggerfall, they did handcraft that one, and Wayrest and Sentinel, those three capital cities, I think they did handcraft those, but the rest of the cities were all procedurally generated. And
Hmm.
same thing with the dungeons. The main quest dungeons were handcrafted, but then the side quest dungeons were randomly generated. And in this game, all, from my understanding, maybe unless you start off in a dungeon, they actually didn't say where you're going to start off in the game. If they're going to do classic Elder Scrolls style where you start off in a dungeon and have to fight your way out, or if you're going to do like, or what you're going to do. So I guess time will only tell on that one. So maybe if you do in a starting dungeon, I don't even actually, and if you did start in a dungeon, I don't know if it's going to be randomized. Like, are you going to start in a random dungeon somewhere in the world? I don't know. So um, that would be an interesting idea.
Huh. That would.
And so, yeah, so that leads a lot more into the NPC. They also didn't say if other NPC, they mentioned other NPCs being adventures and stuff like that and potentially interfering with your quest. Um, they didn't say if, like, if you're inside of a dungeon or something, would another adventurer like come in there at some point and maybe challenge you or just ignore you and run past. Like, they didn't say if anything like that was going to happen. He just kind of used the outer world as an example. So I don't know if that's something that only takes place in the overworld or if that can take place literally anywhere. So, but they did say the NPCs will be walking in and out of buildings, going to shops and everything. Like, it's going to be pretty detailed stuff. So, and but I guess we'll just need to see the game to know exactly how detailed it is. So, and maybe even they are trying to, get it a certain detail, and maybe that's why they have been a smidge vague on how far they'll go with the NPCs, because maybe they don't even know how fleshed out they'll be able to pull this off. So that may be why. But they did say it's definitely going to be a lot of details, and in my opinion, NPCs being able to change their schedule over time and the much more detailed text, the generation versus like what we got in Daggerfall, those two things alone makes a world of difference in PCs, because that can really flesh out the world. Because the problem with games like Oblivion, it's cool that they all have their own schedule and stuff, but it didn't take more than a few minutes following an NPC around. You realize they're not really doing anything, they're just kind of wandering to different spots and then just kind of standing there. And so it's one of those things, the more you pay attention to it, the more the magic sort of goes away. It's really intended for you not to pay that much attention to it. And so in this game, I'm kind of wondering how much you have to pay attention in the same scenario. Like if I sit there and follow an NPC around, like is that going to lose some of the magic there? And I start to see, the blindfold comes off a little bit, and I start to see, what's happening here, or will actually, really interesting things unfold. So that's what I'm curious about when those one of the things I'm going to probably test out when I play the game. And and so, but yeah, I was trying to think if I missed anything. Sorry, I know I've been blabbering on forever. I'm just really excited for this game. Plus, it was really nice to see, because most of the devlogs they've been shown so far, they talked about some engine stuff and
Yeah.
technical things, but never quite in this detail. And I'm more of a technical mechanic guy than I am a graphics guy. So the other devlogs, when they focus so much on graphics, and oh, they also updated the animation. I think I mentioned in a previous podcast episode that when I watched the last devlog, I mentioned that the animation looked kind of funny, and to me, and I was just like, I was like, everything else looked really good, but if they just work on the animation, I'm like, I'm fine with the way everything else looks in terms of looks and stuff like that. I don't know about mechanics, um, but in this, they showed with the new engine and all their animations and stuff they were doing, much better looking. Yeah, the way they were swinging the sword,
Hmm.
the way they were climbing, and just moving their arms around in general, because of course the game will be in first person. Um, moving their
I mean,
arms and
I'd
stuff like
hope it
that in
would
general.
look a lot better at this point.
Yeah. So the new engine has definitely made a huge difference. I don't know if that was a problem they were having with Unreal Engine, or if that was just they just hadn't got to that point yet when it came to animation, and now they finally fleshed that out some more. And so yeah, the animation does look a lot better. So when they get all the graphics, all the art and stuff like that, really more fleshed out into the actual game world. Like I said, they have all the art, but they haven't quite got it all into the game world yet. They're just still kind of got it in the folders and stuff on the side. So they're getting to that point, and because they've been setting up all this stuff, all these tools and mechanics and everything on the new engine, and so once they get all of that in there, it'll be interesting to actually see the animation in the game a little bit more, so that because they were showing mostly the animation in an isolated kind of situation. And but yeah, the map tool and the armor and clothes, those two things were probably the two most impressive things I thought. Oh, and all the NPCs rendering in the background, that was a cool concept too. But yeah, so uh I'm pretty ecstatic.
Sounds
I
like
was I was already excited before I saw this devlog, but this devlog has now shot me out into more excitement, and now I'm really excited. So I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. So even though early access is only going to be on the one island, but like I said, keep in mind this island is huge. I think he mentioned it was like 4 times or maybe 5 times the size of what did he say? The 5 times the size of Manhattan or something like that. And so it's bigger. That one map is bigger than Skyrim, that one little island. And so you'll have, like I said, even though it's just going to be one island, you're going to have plenty of stuff to do in early access. They also didn't disclose how many of these details were going to make it into early access. So when the game early access first comes out, there may be some missing mechanics at first, and then they'll get added in later. So as they do updates and stuff. So that will be another thing to consider as well. So it won't just be graphics and artwork. It may be some missing mechanics too that will need to come in later. So yeah, that Wayward Realms, pretty excited. Yeah. Just a little bit, can you tell?
Just a wee bit.
Yeah. That I honestly, yeah, I really would just need to see the source code. I've sat there and racked my brain on that mini map on how I would set that up myself, and I honestly just can't figure out how in the world I would set that up myself. I really, but he said if you own the game, you own the source code. He said you can do whatever you want with modding. He said you can use the code to do it for something else of your own project. He said you could give it to friend. You can do whatever you want with it. He was like, they're giving you access to all that stuff. So, and he was because they wanted it to be very mod friendly. And so I'm really excited because from my understanding, this game will not have some of the details I've mentioned in earlier podcast episodes, that some of the specific preferences that I have with RPGs that I don't share with other RPG gamers. Um, Particularly one example is having an eating system. That's just a preference of mine. And so from my understanding, the Wayward Realms will not have that. So that would be an interesting mod for someone to introduce that I would definitely get once it came into play. Because and I also may even look if I can understand the source code well enough. I think they're using C++, plus plus. So and I've never done that before, so I don't know. But depending on how I may even attempt to add some simple things myself. But yeah, you'll be able to add in, it's not just of course programming. You'll be able to add in new your own artwork and stuff like that into the folders and get all that in the game. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if later on down the road people started putting in all kinds of crazy stuff in the game, like sci-fi elements and stuff like that. It wouldn't surprise me if people started doing that. So
Well, I mean, modders will do all kinds of stuff.
oh yeah.
There's no limit to what those guys can think of.
So anyway, is there anything else you wanted to talk about? We're kind of we're not almost out of time, but getting close to almost out of time.
Uh,
There, like I said, I had a completely different episode kind of planned, but like I said, we can save that for next week. I was going to do a
yeah,
little
we can hit that
silly, a
message.
silly thing. So, but then
Maybe
it
don't
turned once
forget.
I saw that devlog, and especially when I watched it the second time, I was like, okay, screw all that stuff. I want to talk about this, especially that
Oh,
mini map tool. I definitely was excited to talk about that.
yeah.
So,
Well,
and
that
share
make
my
look
opinions on it.
on yeah, on game wise, I mean the only thing I'm really excited to see soon is Light No Fire
Yeah,
and how well they work in the entire scale to scale model of the Earth into
yeah,
their game. Like that's going to be awesome. Like I'm hoping you get to go from one side if you're on the very north of the planet, you go west and come all the way back to north from east.
yeah. Yeah, I have that game on my wish list as well, so I'm definitely curious about that one. So,
Also,
like,
the fact that playing has multiple different types of races that you would naturally see in games like frog people and badger people.
yeah, like No Man's Sky was like cool and all. It was a cool concept, but this, yeah, Light No Fire, I think might be a much better uh
Hmm.
game because I think it taking place on one planet that is really huge will allow I think more. I think maybe a concept for an entire universe may have been a bit too ambitious in filling in
Hmm.
like things to do and stuff like that. So this game, I'm not don't
Yeah, because they're
anyone that's
still
yeah,
adding new stuff to No Man's Sky because they just had a new update with vehicles and stuff.
yeah,
But like, you gotta think if it's a one for one scale of the Earth, literally everyone on Earth can play it and still have room
yeah,
because you gotta calculate the size of buildings in our world and the spaces, how spaced out they are.
yeah,
And some of those buildings aren't even for people to live in, they're businesses. So if you calculate, get rid of the business aspect calculation of those and calculate that they're just someone's base, you literally everyone could be each other's neighbor and just walk around and be like nothing. But of course, let's see here. How many people play No Man's Sky? Because that's going to be a big thing of how. Um, as of February 22nd of 2026, it's registering at 28,000 to 29,500 current players on Steam. While daily activity cross-platform numbers fluctuate, the game maintains a strong, active community, often exceeding 110,000 current players globally around major updates. So there's a high chance you will, unless you just decide to travel the entire Earth, the entire planet, you're not
yeah,
going to run into every. So they only have to literally make one live server, maybe two,
yeah.
because that way they could just do a PvE and a
Excuse me.
PvP server if they want to do that.
Hmm.
But and no one can really get in each other's way. I mean, you could, but you'd be an asshole. Because like,
Well,
dude,
yeah,
just fly over the fuck over there. There's probably another mountain with the exact same view. Uh,
yeah. You
kind
have
of
so
thing.
much room. Just go over there. Yeah.
It's not like you're on a tiny island map and there's
Yeah.
only so much space. Dude, I'm excited. Gaming is, granted, I'm probably going to end up slipping into PC gaming instead of console gaming at some point because consoles are going to be coming fucking crazy with all the tariffs and shit.
Yeah. I've already, even before all that hit, I've already been slowly leaning more and more into PC gaming. Not necessarily by choice. It's kind of something that just sort of happened. It sort of got started when I started working on my own games, obviously using a PC for that. And then, so because of using gaming PCs more often, I just kind of started downloading more and more games on my PC instead of trying to get it on console or trying to get the latest console to play. And so, yeah, every year that passes, I've just slowly become more and more of a PC gamer. So,
Yeah.
but I will never get rid of it. I will say this as a side note, I will never get rid of any of my consoles unless someone offered me like a lot of money, which I don't ever see that happening. But uh, because
Yeah.
I've like in the past, I literally just gave away some of my consoles in the past, and I highly regret doing that. Some of my consoles, I really, even if I'd never played on them, really wish I would have kept them because
Hmm.
those the value of those things go up over the years, and it's a cool gaming kind of thing to keep from the past. And so I have various consoles now I've collected over the years before I ever started leaning into PC gaming, and have no intention on getting rid of them. So because
Yeah, like,
I love my consoles. So
I haven't even turned on my Xbox all weekend. With my new TV, I can watch YouTube and stuff straight through it. So I just been using my TV. My console's been taking a break today, this
yeah, I
weekend.
don't blame you. I don't have a big fancy TV like you, so I just prop my laptop on my lap and just watch stuff on there. So, and then
Oh
at work, I
yeah,
always just use my phone, of course. But so,
yeah. But I busted my ass off this year for this last year for this TV for this shit.
yeah. Oh, I don't blame you. So I don't blame you for using it.
Also,
I
I
don't
was
have
using a
so.
TV that was literally made in 2010 and has been
I
actively
don't.
used since 2010.
I have two small TVs that I use. They were really just meant to be used as monitors that I was going to bring to work, years ago that I brought to work to play games on my PS2
Mhm.
back then. And my TV was a refurbished TV, and I actually don't know when that TV originally was made. So, because like I said, it was an older TV that they just sort of refurbished, and I bought it for cheap on Amazon. It was only like I think like $40 or something, if maybe that, even if that much, I can't remember.
Right,
And it worked. So I was like, it didn't need to be like big or fancy or anything. I just want a TV to play PS2 games on. So and then
right.
later on, I bought this better one, but it's still not very big. It's just a small little TV but my couch is really close to my TV. So like, I don't really need it to be that big either. Not that I ever use it much anymore. My son is the one that uses that. He brings over his PS4 and plays on it. So, but anywho, we're almost
With
out of
that be,
time. So, yeah.
yeah. With that being said, comment down below if there's any games you're excited for, and what is the most exciting part of the engine he was just talking about to you. And we'll see you the next one. So don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, and all that jazz. Bye.
Welcome to the city where chaos thrives. Kevin and Eric keep people alive. Random talks and stories collide. Bar City Anthem, let's take a ride. Bar City, the place to be. Laughs and madness, wild and free. Tune in now, let the good vibes flow. Bar City, your favorite show. Guitars, drum and synths ignite. Jokes and banter, morning or night. From the weird to the totally bizarre. Bar City legends shining like a star. Bar City, the place to be. Laughs and madness, wild and free. Tune in now, let the good vibes flow. Bar City, your favorite show. Guitars, drum and synths ignite. Jokes and banter, morning or night. From the weird to the totally bizarre. Bar City, a legend, shining like a star. Bar City, the place to be. Laughs and madness, wild and free. Tune in now, let the good vibes flow. Bar City, your favorite show. Eric drops a pun,